Hi, I'm E.D. Lewis, and welcome back to my channel, E.D. Lewis Reviews. This is my first review for a bit. Um, but, by the time it's not quite nocturnal yet, but by the time it probably goes up, it'll probably be dark. So, we're going to call it a nocturnal review anyway. And before we get started, please hit that like button, that subscribe button, that little bell with the subscribe so you'll get a notification when I have a new video up. And please leave a comment down below. Okay, so where do I want to start with this? I have been putting off doing this one for quite some time. It is, no, I'll just go ahead and tell you what it is. If you've read the title, you already know what this is. The Castle of Otranto, a Gothic Story by Horace Walpole. It is a Gothic horror story and kind of a Gothic romance, I would call it. Published back in 1764, and it is credited as being the first Gothic story. I don't know if that can be disputed or not. There's also a legend about it being supposedly based off of an earlier work, an earlier Italian manuscript or something, but that all turned out to be a fabrication of the author, so. But I think it was to help generate some interest in the story. Kind of going back on it being the first Gothic novel, this book does create some of the Gothic tropes that we're familiar with, and without it, we would not have, the monk, Interview with the Vampire, Rebecca, Mexican Gothic, The Haunting of Hill House, all these, classic and more modern and contemporary Gothic stories. So, anyway, let's go ahead and dive in, and I'll give my opinions afterwards. So I'm going to try not to give too many spoilers, kind of give you kind of a brief overview of what happens to a point, and then without spoiling too much. So the story starts on the day of the wedding to a young man named Conrad, and he is on his way to, meet up, with his fiancée, Princess Isabella. But unfortunately, he is crushed to death by a giant helmet that falls from the sky. And this is just the tip of the iceberg because it turns out to be part of a prophecy about the castle and its current line. And I'm looking at my notes. I did practice this, but that was the night before last because I had plans last night. And so I didn't get to go over this again. Conrad's father, who's named Manfred, he becomes really paranoid about this, and he's afraid that his line will die out. So he makes plans to divorce his wife, Hippolyta, and marry Isabel in her place, hoping for a strong, healthy male heir. So Isabel is not too keen on this, and so she escapes with the help of a poor man by the name of Theodore, and they make their way to I don't remember if the church had a name. Well, to a church. I cannot remember if it had a name or not. Where they meet Friar Jerome, who turns out to be Theodore's biological father. The story does have twists, and we've already seen some right there. So anyway, Manfred, he tracks them down to the church, and he wants Theodore to, he wants him dead. So, but before this can happen, though, some knights arrive from the kingdom that Isabella is from, and they're there to retrieve her. So, both Manfred and the knights are searching for her in the church, and she's heading away. So, Manfred takes Theodore, traps him in a tower, but Manfred's daughter, Matilda, she comes and she rescues him, lets him out, and he makes plans to go rescue Isabella, and that's where I'm going to cut you off because I don't want to give too much more away. So, this story has mistaken identities in it. It has ghosts. It has, of course, castles. a Gothic church, and it has, secret identities, and there is a murder. And I'm not talking about the death of the son, Conrad, at the start. No, I'm talking about there is a murder that happens, and I can't tell you anything about that, so... Which I haven't shown the book. So I finally did get a copy of this when I went on vacation last late spring, early summer, and it came in this book, which actually was bought for me as a gift at Barnes & Noble. And, it's The Phantom of the Opera and Other Gothic Tales. Had no idea what the Gothic Tales were, because it didn't tell you it was all wrapped in plastic. Well, when I finally got to open it and I looked through it, the 5th one down turned out to be the Castle of Otranto. I don't know if you can see that or not. And I have it marked right here. So I finally got a copy, quite by accident, actually, of it. And I'm very happy that I did. So I could do my review, because I don't like doing a review on something that I've read that I didn't own and, wasn't able to do a review at the time. I think I read this when I wasn't even doing reviews yet. So, and I didn't have a copy of my own. It's just easier when I have my own copy. Now, to get why I was so hesitant, I'm not a fan of the story. I mean, it has all the classic tropes that I love in Gothic literature, but I was not a fan of the story. I didn't hate it, I just didn't care for it. The most exciting part for me was the end, and that's not because it was the end of the story was over and done. No, it was just, to me, the most exciting part was at the end of the book. So, that's the part I actually liked. I did like the events at the very end. It was very exciting for me. The other bits of it I actually found boring. It's interesting, but it's just not... It just wasn't something I liked. Now, this doesn't mean, of course, and if you wouldn't like it, and if you like really old-timey horror, it would be right up your alley. I actually like The Monk far better. The Monk has its parts where it gets a tad boring in places, but I think that's mostly because there's a lot of backstory, and the backstories are long intervals, so... which really stretches out The Monk a lot. But it's a good horror story, and it probably wouldn't exist without the Castle of Otranto. So I highly recommend, if you want to see the early beginnings of Gothic literature, check out this book. Also, if you like old-timey horror, check it out too. It's before you get into the Victorian horror. And so I would check it out. So, if you're curious and stuff, to me it was a harder read. But The Monk's kind of a challenging read too, but I highly recommend it though. So do check it out. As far as I know, there are really not any adaptations of this, like, film or television, which is kind of sad. I kind of would like to see one, even though I didn't care for the story. I would like to see an adaptation, so... There might be some animations that people have done online. I think I saw the beginning of one, but they had the characters mixed up a little bit, and so I watched a little bit of it. But, yeah, I would like to see an adaptation of it. So, anyway, that's my review, and I will see you guys soon. I do plan on having a review very soon on one of the books I'm reading right now. And it's an indie author book, and so I'm very excited about doing it. Excited but nervous because I actually know the author. And, yeah, so that's what I got for you. So, go follow me on social media. Information for that is down below. I don't think I have the links up right now, but you can find me on Instagram with my Instagram name is down below. And you can find me on Goodreads and Bookbub and Twitter. So anyway, that is my review, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.